So, what a lot of the listeners, because several of them are going to know who you are from Marriage Helper and the fact that you are the reason Marriage Helper even exists. And they're going to want to know how you handled being a parent through a divorce.
That was extremely difficult. I was blessed in that I had my family within 20 miles of me. Some of them lived in the same town, but my parents were absolutely my salvation when it came to, Joanna and...
Oh, y'all lived in Montgomery.
We lived in Montgomery.
Yeah.
And so they would stay in Tallahassee because I had to work.
Mm-hmm.
And they were wonderful, and all my brothers and sisters were wonderful, and they really just loved them, But when it was just the three of us together, it was very sad.
Mm.
Joanna would cry a lot. Of course, Angel would cry. She missed her dad, but she didn't really understand, because he would come see him every other weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But he would always leave too. So it was hard. It was really a sad time, that 3 years,
How long did the divorce process take?
It took about a year, I think.
So what happened? Like, what was the breaking point in your marriage where y'all decided to separate or to divorce? How did it unfold?
He was caught.
He was caught in an affair.
Yes.
How was he caught? Did you catch him?
I knew it, but I didn't know it. I'm not sure.
That I know?
No. Do you know?
That's why I'm asking the question. I don't know.
It's been so many years ago.
Was he caught by a person?
I think he was. I have actually never really... I don't know why. I don't remember that. Maybe that's something I have blocked out of my memory.
Yeah.
But I just know he was caught.
And then you were told.
Yeah. Because I really knew it.
Yeah. You sensed it.
I sensed it for several months.
And you knew the woman.
I figured it out who it was, but I didn't have proof.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I really need to clear up with him.
So when he was caught, was he immediately fired? Because he was for people who may not know, he was a preacher at a church.
Yes, I think he was.
And then what did you do? Did you move out? Did he move out?
He moved out.
Immediately. It was like right then.
I went on a trip with Mother and Daddy and my sister and her husband and Joanna and Angela. And I knew he left when I was gone. And then when I got back, he wasn't there, is the way I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
That was just, I cannot tell you, I cannot even explain how absolutely devastating that week or two was. Because I had not told my parents. They did not know anything, and they had loved him. But my brother was a deacon in the church where we were.
Oh, wow.
But Mother and Daddy knew it. They knew something, because I was absolutely a zombie on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
I was. I couldn't even hardly function. We went to the mountains. And, yeah.
How did you handle all of it, the emotions, the pain, the hurt? How did you get back to where you could function again?
It took me, I would say 3 or 4 or 5 months. I didn't want to get out of bed. I would send the kids to school and then I'd go back to bed. I was just in the darkest place. And Mother and them would come down, and they'd try to, but I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't do anything. I handled everything terribly. Everything that I did was the wrong thing. I think I remember begging him not to leave and crying, and And then every time I would see him, I would cry and, I was so terribly unattractive at that time because I was so depressed and so devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I realized, I got to get up and do something. I don't have a job, never had work, never had to.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled myself up and one of the elders at the church owned his son-in-law owned a fireplace shop. And he told me to go over there. And they hired me. And I was a salesperson, believe it or not. It was just kind of crazy.
And you were a pretty good salesperson.
I ended up being a very good salesperson. But that's really when I started kind of putting my life somewhat back together, pulling myself up because I didn't have any self-confidence. I had zero self-confidence, really even in our first marriage, because I saw myself as Mrs. Joe Beam and not Alice Beam.
Mrs. Joe
I would
Beam.
introduce can you imagine this knowing me now? That I would tell people when I would introduce myself, I would say, I'm Mrs. Joe Beam. And it was like my whole identity was in Joe.
Well, he was, before the affair, he was very successful.
Oh, my goodness. Everybody wanted him.
Yeah.
He traveled 52 weeks. He traveled 52 speaking engagements a year.
Yeah.
That's one a week.
Yeah.
And some of them were several days a week, to audiences that were 10, 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So really I began to see myself, hey, I'm valuable. I can do this. I can really do this, And I think over time he began to see how I was changing.
So you're the original working on your pies person.
I really am, and didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had not a clue what I was doing, but yeah. People ask me questions sometime in the workshop, and I said I was working on pies. They asked me how I got through it and all that. I said I actually began to work on my pies when I didn't even know what working on the pies was all about.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did you find the time as a single mom to focus on yourself as well?
I would focus on myself. Really, my focus was on myself was at work. Mm-hmm. Really, because I had friends, but I did have one friend, and I would go see her a lot. And she was a young mother, so I would help, rock the baby and all that kind of stuff. And we would go out to eat together because she had another child, and then I had the two, and she had the baby. So I would go out with her a lot. But I just didn't want to develop friendships. Other than just the one with her. And I would go every weekend when I didn't work because I told them that I would not be able to work on the weekends because I'd have to be with my children. And they totally understood that. And they really were really good to me at my work because they knew my situation, But so I would stay on the weekends at my mom and dad's, And
they would help with the kids too.
They would help with the kids, Yeah. They would. And they lived on a farm, so they, there was a lot, to do.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like there was a stigma at church that you were divorced?
Well, I still attended the congregation for a while where we were and where she was.
Did she stay?
Yeah. I would pass her in the halls, and a couple of times she would kind of like bump into me. The reason I stayed is because Joanna liked her class, and Angela even was in a Bible class that she liked. But that didn't last because I just couldn't be there.
I'm surprised you didn't punch her in the face.
I wanted to. Yeah, I really did. But it just hurts so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't think they knew what to say to me or how to treat me.
Yeah.
I think they felt sorry for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I realized I don't want people to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
I really didn't want that.
Right.
So I didn't go to church there long.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, my father was preaching for a little bitty church about 60 miles from Tallahassee. So we would go with him sometime on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever mad at God?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was like, why me?
Mm-hmm.
I have a special needs daughter. I have a 6-year-old. I've never worked. What am I going to do, God? Why did you do this? Why? Why? And those days that I was, my darkest in those first few months, that's what I would think every day, and I was so depressed. It's like, Lord, why did you do this to me? And I was just like, really mad. And then it just hit me one day, actually after I started working on myself, well, why not me? I mean, literally, why not me? And then about a year or so into the separation, and it took about a year before he started proceedings with the divorce. It didn't take that long, probably about 6 months before it was final. But I started thinking what I did in the marriage that made it fall apart. My part in it. Not that I was the reason he had the affair. I was not.
Mm-hmm.
That was no excuse for him having the affair. But I did have a lot of faults in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I was not there for him when he needed it, when we were going through some religious beliefs that he had, that the brotherhood that we were in, our congregation or our
denomination.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that because we were taught it was that our church was not a denomination, but it is. Okay, it is. That our denomination did not hold, that he held grace of all things. He believed in grace, that everybody had grace.
That it's real.
It is real. And it's crazy that people, and I agreed with him,
Mm-hmm.
but because the people of our denomination did not believe that.
And because you're conflict avoidant.
Absolutely. Why don't you just not believe this? Why don't you just not say this? Because we're going to end up without a job.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there were other things, I was just, it was always what other people thought.
Mm-hmm.
And not what necessarily was the right thing. What are people going to say about this?
Yeah.
How are people going to look at this?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
How did you get over caring about what people thought?
Hard. Just life. Just going through and it wasn't until we reconciled that I started not caring about what people thought and what was the right thing to do. And I really began to realize that when Joe asked me to come back,
Mm-hmm.
I told him I had to take a couple of weeks to think about it. And I went to the elders of the church. They told me not to. That how you going to trust him? You've been 3 years. You're moving on. I thought, well, that's odd. And then of course my parents, but they had loved Joe, but they were very fearful about us getting back together because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I
Right.
did not know. I did not have a clue if this was going to work or not. But what I knew is that he asked me to do this. I had 2 children with him, that they loved him. And actually, I had just started seeing someone about 3 or 4 months before he asked me this. And so to come back, and I was thinking during that time, okay, I could move forward with another person, but there's no guarantees in any relationship, and everybody has baggage. And I knew that with my core values, that's what it came down to with me deciding what I was going to do, is my core values and the fact that he had asked me, and if I said no, I knew that if I told him no the rest of my life, I would wonder, what if I'd have said yes? What would have happened? I wonder what would have happened. So I decided, yes, I'm going to say yes, that I'm coming back, not knowing if it's going to work or not. But I knew in my mind that I was going to do everything in my power to make it work. And I knew to do that, I could not listen to these negative people that were telling me not to. That, that it was my decision and I was going to try it. If it didn't work, well, at least I could look back and say, I gave it a try.
Yeah.
And I would not have to go through my life saying, what if I hadn't tried it? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I just think it's crazy to think, look at what's happened because you tried. So, with that answer or with that thought that you had of, if I say no, what if I had said yes?
Right.
Well, now you know what's happened because you said yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's absolutely right. But on the flip side of that, it took Joe coming to the point in his life to ask me to come back, if I would come back. But I could not have. And look, you wouldn't be here. Oh my gosh. you would not even be here.
Yeah.
And Marriage Helper wouldn't exist.
No. That's what I'm saying. Because you said yes.
Yeah.
Marriage Helper exists. I exist. Yeah. Marriage Helper exists.
Right.
Eliana, my kids exist, right? There's so many effects of one person's decision.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it has been so worth every bit of it, of course, my parents, they just needed to see that he had changed, and they saw that within a year. They were loving him again, going hunting with him. Daddy was taking him hunting, my brothers. So all of it, we've been very blessed.
Did his parents ever say anything to him?
I don't know.
You don't know?
They loved me. I know that.
Well, yeah. I know they loved you.
They did. They didn't.
But what was it like going back and seeing them for the first time after y'all reconciled?
Well, I had gone back a couple of times after he asked me, if I would take. So I had gone back that first time, and it was like there's nothing ever happened. It was weird in a way, It was like we had just picked up like when we were married.
Left off.
Yeah,
yeah. And how did you handle it with the kids, with Joanna and Angel, with the reconciliation? Was that easy for them?
It was exciting for them. I let Joe talk to him. Mm-hmm. He talked to him when he left, and he told him that he was coming back. We both did. We both sat down and told him we were going to be a family again. Mm. And they were involved in they had their little dresses, and they stood up with us, and the little flowers and stuff. So they were part of it. And we talked about we're all getting married. Yeah, we're all becoming a family again.
Yeah.
So they were real excited about that. That was a real special day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did they feel when you got pregnant again?
They were excited. they were. Of course, Angela didn't really understand it until my tummy started getting really big.
Yeah.
And I think Joanna kind of had mixed emotions about it to begin with because, she'd been the baby. But she was excited to know she was going to have a little baby, And then we found out you were a girl pretty quickly because I had a test to see about that. But, yeah.
Because there's a large age difference for the listeners. So me and my oldest sister is 19 years and me and Joanna is 12. So we have a big age gap. So was there ever a part of you that felt like I guess you were never going to be empty nesters because you were always going to have Angel.
Yeah.
But you didn't feel like you were starting back at square one?
Not really.
How did you have the energy? You were 41. I don't even have the energy at 34 to think about a baby.
I did. I mean, it was, people thought we were your grandparents.
I know. It's more common now, though.
It is so common now. Well, even when you were in kindergarten, when we took you to kindergarten the first day, we saw this couple, and Joe and I both said, well, that must be the grandparents bringing, because they were older than us. Yeah. You remember Lauren's parents were older
I think her mom was like 45 or 46 when she had Lauren.
I think she was 4 or 5 years older than me.
Yeah. So in kindergarten, she was already 50 something. Yeah.
So, so we bonded with, it was like, yay, we're not the oldest parents here. But then there were parents that were in their 20s, not even 30.
Yeah.
So it was very strange because even through high school, I was one of the oldest parents.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
you wouldn't do it any different.
I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. I mean,
what advice would you want to leave to the parents out there listening?
Oh my goodness. Just enjoy your children and listen to them. Listen to your children. And I mean, they need to be disciplined, but you need to listen to what they're saying.
What final word of encouragement would you want to leave to the listeners?
I guess what I think about most is family, just the whole family unit, the husband, wife, children, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, grandparents, just the whole family unit, just to keep that intact in your family, keep those traditions going, talk about the things from the past, from the grandparents to the parents to the great-grandparents. Just give them their legacy. Let them know what their legacy was and is.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you want to see the full episode, you can head over to Kimberly's YouTube channel. You can get there by going to youtube.com/@KimberlyBeamHomes. Or if you're watching on desktop, you can click right here somewhere in the top right corner. It'll pop up there. Or you can click the link down in the description.